For all else we accomplished in the past 10 years, this decade will always be remembered for the golden age of knowledge. For a sense of the scope, all you have to do is recall where we stood 5 years ago and ponder this question all over again. Specifically, if Scientology at its essence is knowledge, what then was preventing full comprehension? Well, in answer to that one, I once again refer you to the subject of lost tech. As LRH said, now some people go all of their lives looking for the mystery of the pattern of the pyramids, and others go looking for the Mayan civilization and how it built things, and I go looking for the tech people have lost in Dianetics and Scientology as a primary expeditionary action. LRH. In that regard, it wasn't just that Scientologists didn't know their basics, nor was it simply a matter of not knowing the LRH milestone breakthroughs and developments that built the bridge we have today. Rather, it was truly a sea of confusion. Whole bodies of tech were virtually unknown, meaning how books related to lectures, how lectures related to issues, and how lectures related to each other. Hence, we blew away the first misunderstood. Not misunderstoods within the materials, but a misunderstood on what the materials were. So came the first plateau of the golden age of knowledge, the know-how of knowing how to know. That was the materials guide chart, providing a virtual grade chart to full attainment of that knowledge. And as an immediate launch point, we provided the milestone LRH Congresses. As you'll also recall, before the guide chart, you could have carefully perused the copyright page of the books and still not know the chronological sequence. And as for what book to read, it was pretty much a blind pick. Then again, as you now know, even if you did by accident pick the right one, the book itself was garbled beyond any comprehension, and so it was a big mush, A equals A equals A. And even for those who did persist, study itself became an engram buried beneath 15 dictionaries on a word chain that extended into past lives. Of course, some really did get it because they cognited it all made sense inasmuch as knowledge is deep and transcends the bounds of knowingness. And besides, everyone knew that a book authored in 1952 would only make sense when you reached OT 56. But then came the basics and two incontrovertible truths. First, no, you are not stupid. And second, that the world of Scientology changed forever. Indeed, Scientologists everywhere and speaking every language experience the first principle of Scientology every day, that it is possible to know about the mind, spirit, and life. And while I could further cite such basic facts as more books read in the last 2.5 years than all previous years combined, all while the numbers of LRH lectures heard is more than 10 times our cumulative history, well, all that really matters is how those numbers translate into full knowledge, speed of case gain, and total freedom. And for that, here it is in your own words.
The golden age of knowledge has changed Scientology beyond anything anyone could possibly imagine because it's united us as a group.
It's a point where we actually became full-blooded Scientologists.
Now we truly have source. Now we truly have the information that makes us all Scientologists, true Scientologists that can propel us into the future.
That is why it's a golden age. There's no stops now. We have the data. We have the information in its purity.
This just pushed things into overdrive, where now there's this big focus. People are getting the technology fast.
Whether or not you're starting at the beginning of the bridge or you're clear OT, everybody has this data.
The winds are uniform. You can feel in the course room the level of the theta so much higher.
There's a difference, there's a change. The energy is so much different.
Just being around everyone with the same purpose.
There's this tremendous agreement. There's this base of power.
This is the most powerful thing that's happened in Scientology.
You're really having this ongoing conversation with LRH day by day by day by day. You know, whether you're reading it or you're listening to a lecture, it's this continuous, amazing conversation about life and being OT.
I'm learning about me. I'm learning about mankind. I'm learning about the development, the evolution.
Reading book by book, it builds upon each book. So it became easier and faster and easier and faster.
I am so much faster than I was
it's like night and day.
Where before we've been kind of riding along a bit on a bike, this is like putting a Formula One car there.
Going with all cylinders firing.
Like the brakes are off.
Just in 1 week, I finished 4 basic books.
The PDCs, I did that in 16 days, part-time.
And you're just gathering this information like a snowball. And all of these gaps started being filled in.
And all the pieces start to match. And then you see, at the end, you see the whole perspective.
Everything gelled and made so much sense.
It just goes...
And you go, oh, yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa.
The light bulb turned on.
It was an oh my God moment.
The winds just hit the rest of your dynamics like a truck.
At work, at life, at everything I do now.
I'm so at cause.
Cause of life.
Goes over the universe.
No aspect of this universe that I don't know about.
I don't just know, I know everything.
My overall progress on the bridge, since I found the basics, it's just, I've zoomed.
I finished my happiness rundown ARC straightware and I made grade 0 now.
DRD to grade 0 in about 7 days.
It was so fast. The grades were like bam, bam, bam.
You can see the other side of the bridge. It puts it in plain view.
Field clearing and OT are right here.
The auditing is just so much smoother.
Here's the question, here's the answer.
No Q&A. I know exactly what I need to look for.
It's a spotlight directly on what you're going for.
Okay, that's what we're going for.
Let's find that.
I'm taking you down. Anger, I'm gone.
My sessions are like, boom.
10 times more case gain, 10 times the speed.
Within 10 days of starting my NED, I tested to clear.
I tested to clear.
I tested to the state of clear. And now I'm OT3.
Notified.
Power Plus all the way to OT7 in 7 months.
I finished OT7.
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 T8.
OT8.
OT8.
So I think it speeded it up, didn't it?
You take the strongest, most willing and able group on the planet, and the golden age of knowledge just galvanized everyone.
That's when we really got into gear.
We're on a roll.
And I just see that momentum spilling over from Scientology into the planet.
An explosion of data and tech going out.
And the wave is not stopping.
Contagion of theta, if you will.
Everyone can have it, attain it.
Every country, every library.
That's the golden age of knowledge. It's creating sanity across the world.
A turning point in history, really.
That's when man really knew himself.
The dwindling spiral has turned away.
In every field, in every facet of life, it's going to be the most important thing that's ever occurred.
The golden age of knowledge was the beginning of life becoming the way it should be.
So yes, that's the golden age of knowledge and what it has meant to the world of Scientology so far. Because for all you've thus far seen and experienced, let's now look to the future, and I mean right out to eternity. Because this next one not only puts a stamp on the golden age of knowledge, but its ramifications to all else that is Scientology are of such magnitude, the word epic has never been more appropriate. Take it all: knowledge, training, processing, the grade chart, introductory routes, ideal organizations, planetary clearing, and this is the final element that makes all else possible. And if I haven't sufficiently grabbed your attention, what you're about to see also marks the culmination of a 25-year project, a project initiated by LRH himself in 1984, and which in total has consumed millions of hours. And were that not enough, the mere fact of its accomplishment is the ultimate guarantee for the permanency of Scientology itself. And here's why. With the basics, we recovered the very foundation of our religion and the fundamentals upon which the whole of Dianetics and Scientology rests. With the congresses, we recovered the milestone announcements that built the bridge we have today. And with this one, we recover the lost tech that brings it all together for application. All right. So yes, what you see before you, combined with all else I'm about to unveil, marks the completion of the golden age of knowledge in total and forever. Indeed, to gain the... Indeed, to gain the knowledge, LRH knowledge now at hand, you would have had to attend every LRH course, Congress, and ACC. And yes, I've checked, the only person who ever did that was LRH himself. So, no, I'm not overstating it when I tell you, for the first time in history, it's now possible to follow every LRH footstep of research and discovery. But even beyond that, this release represents a recovery of lost tech that impacts every level of the bridge, from its entrance to the lower grades and all the way to the upper spans. For the case supervisor, it provides the answer as to why processes are used and when to use them. For the auditor, it provides the exact wherefores and warehouse of every technical breakthrough. And for every other Scientologist, it not only provides the complete route to knowledge and understanding, but the easiest study route there is. And no, you didn't misduplicate me on that last one. As for why, you'll know by the time I'm done, but for the moment, let's just say these lectures follow straight from the basics. So what might have seemed like complete gobbledygook and beyond the realm of understanding in earlier years is something those who have completed the basics will find as easy as following the dots. And although you may have heard it before, it also bears repeating, for this is how LRH described these lectures. They were blazing a trail from total ignorance of the subject to today. Men knew nothing about the mind when it began, and we are where we are today. What were the progressive series of actions, steps, thoughts, conclusions, tests, demonstrations that lay along that route? Any Dianeticist or Scientologist today, looking into things which can be done with auditing and processing, can say to himself, it's always been this way for the last 195 billion years. The hell it has. And these tapes were the milestones on the road out, LRH. So to begin, and as for why these materials are only now available, let me show you what it took to recover this lost tech. In the first place, take the basics plus congresses, and the magnitude of this one is greater by double. In point of fact, just the lectures alone total 1,019. And of course, every one of them has now been meticulously restored, which is an epic saga all unto itself. Because considering the age of these lectures, not to mention the questionable expertise of those who originally recorded the lectures, that project was a lot easier said than done. By way of example, while Hollywood has spent a great deal of resources to develop film restoration technology, such is not the case with sound. For instance, take the entire album collection of the biggest rock band in history, all recently restored and released. That was 13 albums, and it took a team of technicians 4 years to complete the restoration. By comparison, our original recordings are considerably older, and the quantity is over 75 times greater. Then too, of course, we're talking the restoration of LRH. So while I could go on all night about how we accomplished it, suffice it to say we pushed the limits of technology, even designing and building our own equipment. But now that it's done, all that really matters is the result, and the best way to appreciate it is to hear it for yourself. The first example concerns improper speed. It's what happens when the recordist doesn't have the tape correctly wound on the recorder. Needless to say, the resultant playback is a tad hard to follow, as in this.
Now you've got the gen on what special cases? We are targeting and calling special cases. You'll find a great many cases are special cases, unfortunately. To begin.
But here it is, restored.
Now you've got the gen on what special cases? we are targeting and calling special cases. You'll find a great many cases are special cases, unfortunately. To begin,
a few more. Then there is the matter of radio interference creating a high-pitched whine that sounds like this.
You'll get somebody, if he says he's in need of a vacation. Things must have slacked off lately. There were very few people rushing in and presenting him with big stacks of problems.
Now, while that might be an acceptable sound effect for a sci-fi movie, we'd much prefer students hear it like this.
You'll get somebody, if he says he's in need of a vacation. Things must have slacked off lately. There were very few people rushing in and presenting him with big stacks of problems.
Then again, there's static. This is the one that sounds like you're hearing a radio broadcast from another city.
I was just about 7 months ago. I remember sitting back and saying, well, that's that. Sat back at my desk and tossed a bunch of papers in the air and said, to hell with it. No more am I going to be confused on this very interesting point.
And again, here's the after.
I was just about 7 months ago. I remember sitting back and saying, well, that's that. Sat back at my desk and tossed a bunch of papers in the air and said, to hell with it. No more am I going to be confused on this very interesting point.
And here's every other audio problem I've thus far played in combination in something that can only be described as, what the hell was that?
Lack of incident. Lack of experience. Lack of things with which to exercise. When you have too few things happening to you.
And again, the restoration.
Lack of incident. Lack of experience, lack of things with which to exercise when you have too few things happening to you.
And finally, there is tonality, and that's because you should hear LRH as he sounded, not as he sounded over the telephone.
Take a hold of the cans there and so forth. Well, that's fine. It's all right with you. We start this session? Okay, start.
And as it should have sounded and now does.
Take a hold of the cans there and so forth. Well, that's fine. It's all right with you. We start this session? Okay, start.
So there you have it, the sound restoration of LRH's lectures. If those are the lectures, next came the issues, and on that count, we are back to the basics and what it took to return them to pure, unadulterated source. Assuming you saw the basics release, you will recall it required meticulous verification against the original manuscripts. But far and away, the greatest sin of all was committed by the now infamous transcriptionist, meaning where LRH authored text by dictating it into a tape recorder for typed transcription by another. Whereupon we discovered total garbles wherein sections of the text were entirely altered, transcription errors whereby LRH dictates a sentence, then replaces it with another, but the transcriptionist leaves both sentences in the text, and worst of all, the garden variety transcription error where the typist isn't sure whether to punctuate with a period, a colon, or a comma, and in almost every instance decides to go with a happy medium and uses a semicolon, making for sentences, indeed whole paragraphs, where you don't know where the sentence began or ended. And that was the story behind the recovery of the basics. But it's by no means the end of our story, because move into the early period of the ACCs, and it was still a few years before that transcriptionist was off the lines. The only difference, she was now transcribing issues, not books. And if that gives you the feeling of horror, you have no idea. However, nothing in this golden age of knowledge is superficial, and regardless of how overwhelming the task may have seemed to others, it had to be done. Moreover, once completed, it would be done forever. So here's what it took. First, every page of LRH original material had to be found and assembled. Of course, you could have started and merely taken every published issue and then corrected them one by one. However, if you took what had already been published as the stable datum, any omissions would go entirely unnoticed. Then there was the matter of policy letters, and while they may concern organizational administration not directly related to the technology contained in these lectures, those policies would nevertheless require the same verification and correction for use by staff. Hence, there was only one sure route to full recovery of the tech, and that was by doing everything, all of it, chronologically. That is, by reviewing every issue, every lecture, not to mention every LRH dispatch, letter, note, you name it, in sequence as it occurred. And should you wonder how enormous was this task, take all lectures totaling 1,393 hours and 18 minutes, now add 96 full boxes of written material, all of it resulting in 5,393 pages, comprising 1,618,806 words, and yes, it's now done, every word of it. Now, while the number of issues might have seemed overwhelming, don't let it overwhelm you, for as I said, those numbers include every type of LRH issue. The relevant ones included in the ACC's number only about 500. On the other hand, don't underestimate what this now means in terms of recovery of lost tech and study from here on out. Again, a few examples speak volumes. First are the garbles in transcription, meaning where the typist altered what LRH said. Take Journal of Scientology 21G, meaning general. Its title is The Theory of Communication, yet until now it's been a miscommunication. To wit, here's how the text read. He will experience full relief if he does this. Well, the actual LRH statement reads, he will experience a tendency to line charge if he does this. Now, while that may not have confused anybody, since one wouldn't necessarily know how the text should have read, this next one is a beast of another color entirely. Almost any computation of this chair act can be worked out, and if you can't quite fathom the meaning of that one, here's what LRH actually wrote. Almost any computation of this character can be worked out. Then there's the passage wherein LRH explains how to best run this process on a pre-clear. The only problem is that the entire paragraph was omitted. Next example, Professional Auditor Bulletin number 43. It's fairly important, especially considering it's called plotting the pre-clear on the tone scale. Yet try and figure this one out. It does not matter what intervenes. The pre-clear may outflow, jabber, discuss, pause, hedge, disperse, dither, or be silent. No doubt many an auditor has looked for the special definition of that word dither, especially since the word is actually divert. Finally, there's the example that comes from the HCOB of 5 May 1960, help. The issue concerns the make-break point of sanity for the pre-clear, but now consider this garble. Until now, the text read, the trouble comes about when the pre-clear clips the effort of the auditor into the category of betrayal. Clips? Actually, what LRH said was, the trouble comes about when the pre-clear puts the effort of the auditor into the category of betrayal. Needless to say, it's now a datum that can be understood by the auditor so he can appropriately help his pre-clear when such a circumstance arises. Next, there is the example of out of sequence, and in this instance, a handwritten LRH HCOB. Problem is, the secretary apparently dropped the pages, then couldn't figure out the proper sequence. Of course, that's being charitable since the issue is only 3 handwritten pages long and therefore only has 6 possible combinations of pages. Then again, Considering the first page has the title and another page has the signature, it shouldn't have been too hard to reason where the third page went. But for reasons known only to God and herself, this particular secretary decided the page with no heading and no signature must be the last page, whereupon she wrote the word continued after the signature and put the middle page last. All of which brings us to entirely lost issues. First, there were the ones that were published at one time or another, then simply lost in later compilations of issue volumes. Then again, there are those lost entirely and which would have never been discovered had we not reviewed everything LRH had ever written, meaning handwritten, typed, or dictated issues that never made it into print. And while I could cite example after example, it's no less than 221 issues and articles up to 1961, now fully restored. But notwithstanding all that, this next one is the most insidious of all in terms of preventing any duplication or understanding, even if engaged in a chronological study. In fact, here's the answer to that nightmare any student, auditor, or CS has had when previously trying to search out the origin of a particular LRH discovery, technical datum, or process. That's the one where you go to the earliest reference you can find on the subject, only to discover that earlier reference already assumes you know about the subject, and so you go to an earlier reference, which again is not the end of the line, and so it goes, tabbing reference after reference until you finally get to the bottom of it, whereupon you discover that you've gone in a circle, and the bottom of it is the first issue that started you on that chain. But here's the answer to that riddle and how it was discovered. In laying out the materials, everything was placed in date order. In this way, it could be determined what issues related to what lectures. Of course, with issues laid out side by side, with the lectures of the same time period, they should have matched exactly. As you've no doubt guessed, they didn't. By way of example, in a lecture of 27 October 1953, LRH speaks of professional auditor bulletins on human behavior, human character, and acceptance level processing. Yet the issues he is referring to are dated a month or two after that lecture. Similarly, there were lectures on communication in May of 1955, yet the corresponding issues of the time period are on spotting spots, something he had lectured on 7 months earlier in November 1954. Well, here's your answer to the riddle. In authoring professional auditor bulletins, LRH would often write several of them at a sitting, usually 3 or 4 at a crack. Those issues, specifically professional auditor bulletins, were then further disseminated to the field each month. Now, instead of dating the issues when they were written, the secretary decided to date them when they were finally published for the field. Hence, you get 3 issues written in August 1953 and yet dated as mid-November 1953, late November 1953, and mid-December 1953, all of them dated long after they were authored, all of them with different dates and hence not corresponding to the lectures at all. But suffice to say, the correct date now appears on every issue, and yes, the content of those issues exactly corresponds with the content of lectures from the same time period. Consequently, and for the first time in our history, a full chronological study is now possible. Moreover, that also describes the content of these new lecture series. Every lecture, every related issue, every one in their correct sequence, providing a total and complete chronology of the tech so that anyone searching out a particular body of technology can easily find it, at which point he will find it all. And that's the recovery of the full chronology of LRH Tech. If that's the restoration of this technology, far more important is what that technology is and how it relates to your study. As you know, the basics are the foundation, the fundamentals of Dianetics and Scientology, and the platform on which all else rests. As you further know, the Congresses are LRH's public announcement of his milestone breakthroughs. Professional course lectures are those which form the basis of auditor certification on the technology of any given era. And finally, as you've previously heard, the advanced clinical course lectures are those originally delivered to trained auditors attending these special courses. However, while these lectures are utterly invaluable for auditors to fill in the blanks, the whys and wherefores behind today's processes, to say these lectures are only for auditors is entirely misleading. After all, we are heading into the year 2010, and to categorize advanced clinical course lectures as only for those who did the academy levels, briefing course, or class 8 doesn't make sense, especially inasmuch as all of those courses post-date these lectures. So the more accurate statement is that the advanced clinical course lectures were delivered to trained auditors of the time. Well, what had those auditors studied before these advanced clinical courses? The answer, as I mentioned at the outset, is that these lectures immediately follow the basics. And considering that the full body of the basics, every book and lecture, was never available until 2.5 years ago, anybody studying the basics today has a more complete grounding in the technology than those who originally attended these lectures. So a far more accurate description of ACC lectures is that they contain the only record of LRH's research and development, step by step, breakthrough by breakthrough as it occurred, data that is available nowhere else. Moreover, these lectures and issues in combination, packaged as they are, make up a tour de force presentation in terms of accessibility, instant reference, and ease of study. Why? Because you miss nothing. Consider the basics. As you've experienced, it's pretty incredible to read a book and then hear lectures on the same subject. But now consider reading an issue, hearing a lecture, reading an issue from the same day, followed by another lecture, etc. It's truly chronological, day by day, and it's all contained in one package. By way of example, this is the first American Advanced Clinical Course delivered by LRH immediately following the Philadelphia Doctorate Course and Factors lectures. The introduction, as with the introduction to every one of these lecture series, lays out precisely what tech is addressed. In this case, making space, anchor points, pervasion, and the difference between subjective auditing and objective auditing. Next, every new process developed or introduced in the ACC is listed out by name. Any group processes delivered in that ACC are also listed. And finally, the application of existing processes developed prior to the ACC is also provided. Accordingly, it is now possible to not only find the first introduction of any process, but also every further reference to, use, and application of that process or technology. Next, as I've already mentioned, every written issue from the time period of the lectures is also included. Finally, definitions of all technical terms and phrases are provided. In fact, the cumulative number of words defined in all these lecture series is no less than 29,326. So to be sure, it's a massive presentation in every respect. Well, for a summary word on the actual tech contained in all these lecture series, considering they form the only running record of LRH research and development, I could spend the entire night describing it and still only scratch the surface. Besides, there is still another surprise awaiting you which will answer that question in full. But for now, suffice it to say, here is the full recovery of all technology as given on the materials guide chart. Objective processing and exteriorization, that's the 1st to 8th ACC. LRH said in an HCOB in 1980 that without objectives, no being is likely to recover in his infinity of future. Yet the breakthrough of objectives and the objective processes is only contained here, and it's never been available. It's the same with communication. You know Dianetics 55 and the Unification Congress. Well, here is the 9th ACC and 2 pro course lectures, Cause, Distance, Effect, and Live Communication, and they too have never been available. Power of choice. It concerns the rehabilitation of the preclear's ability to make a decision. It's tech so vital that it's even part of the superpower rundown, yet the underlying technology is only contained here and likewise only available now. Games and havingness. If you've read the Fundamentals of Thought, then you've heard of remedy of havingness and games theory. Well, here again for the first time are the technical breakthroughs and application of those processes. Personnel efficiency. As I mentioned at the outset, these lectures affect every level of the bridge, and that includes how to teach new people about Scientology, otherwise known as the Personnel Efficiency course. If you haven't seen it delivered, you now know why, because the data is contained here in the 15th ACC. Control, communication, and havingness, the CCHs. These are rock-bottom objective processes to make an entrance into every case, but only now are the full whys and wherefores available in the 16th and 17th ACC. Communication in Tone 40. These are the breakthroughs underlying TRs and so make an auditor an auditor. And again, the full body of that technology and their instruction is only found in the 18th ACC. Creating a Third Dynamic. It's in the 19th ACC, where LRH reveals the history of whole track societies. Help. The breakthroughs announced in the Clearing Congress films and the full technology for application is in the 20th ACC. Confronting. If you've heard of the book Have You Lived Before This Life, then the 5th London ACC is what formed the case histories found in the original book. Leadership. It's all premised on the senior ability of a Thetan to bring order, and it was a breakthrough that led to the development of co-auditing, and that's the 21st American ACC. World clearing. With the breakthrough technology of co-auditing, LRH developed a plan for world clearing. It's how a single auditor can audit hundreds or even thousands simultaneously, and its application has been entirely lost for no other reason than the 6th London ACC lectures have never been available. Responsibility and Overton withholds. It's the linchpin to attaining OT. If you've heard the State of Man Congress, you know why, but the full breakthrough was made during the first Melbourne ACC, while the Hubbard Clearing Scientologist course containing the full tech for application has never been available until now. Why auditing works? Previously released as the companion to the London Congress on Dissemination and Help, this one contains the tech on auditor presence and altitude. In fact, this is the beginning of modern auditing and what LRH called the jet age of Scientology. The conduct of sessions. Today there is a standard for how a session is conducted. It's called model session, and it's about as basic as it gets, yet the full technology was lost until now, the 22nd American ACC. And finally, goals. It was the breakthrough that resulted in the commencement of the St. Hill Special Briefing Course, and it's all contained here in this 3rd South African ACC. And believe me when I tell you, that's just a fraction of it, because for every datum I've mentioned, there are at least 1,000 more I haven't, but suffice it to say, it's all been recovered, every bit of it, representing the full recovery of lost technology, and that's the Professional and Advanced Clinical Course lectures. And with that, the full chronology of materials, from Dianetics, the original thesis, through all basics, congresses, pro courses, and advanced clinical courses, is available. All of which leaves the next question. What do you do? And here's the answer. So there you have it, Golden Age of Knowledge courses for every lecture series on the materials guide chart. To what you just saw, I might add that for those who have been studying the basics, each one of these Congress, Pro, and ACC lecture courses follows the same pattern. That is, each covers a full study of an entire lecture series and its corresponding issues. And if I've said it before, it bears repeating. The study of the ACCs will bedazzle you. Until you've experienced it day by day, hour by hour, it's almost inconceivable. Quite literally, you never miss a beat, everything dovetails, it all falls into place. It is the ultimate study, and it's now available to you. All of which returns us to the golden age of knowledge and the materials guide chart, because yes, that guide chart comprises a virtual grade chart to the materials. In fact, now that it is complete and all lectures are filled in with no more blank spots, all distinct bodies of technology can be seen as a whole. Moreover, the relationship of materials is also clearly defined, so much so that from here to eternity, no Scientologist will ever again wonder what the materials are. By way of example, every basic lecture series is clearly delineated by the silver color of its binder. Then again, no one will ever wonder what book a lecture series is companion to. It's all now self-evident by cover design. Similarly, every Congress lecture series is easily identified by the white color of its binder. So too the professional and advanced course lectures, immediately identified by the black color of the binder. However, now that the materials of the guide chart are complete, the relationship of Congresses to ACCs is also discernible at a glance. Take the subject of communication. In full, it contains 2 pro course lectures, an ACC, and a Congress, and one can tell at a glance what is what and how they fit together as a complete body of technology. And so it goes throughout. The relationship of professional course lectures on havingness and games theory to the Games Congress, the London Congress on Human Problems and the 15th ACC, the Anti-Radiation Congress and 16th ACC, the Freedom Congress and 18th ACC, and so forth for all materials. So yes, it is now possible for anyone to look up a specific body of technology and find out exactly what materials will provide a full grounding and understanding of that subject. And let me put it bluntly, the ability to do just that, learn the full whys and wherefores and application that stand behind all processes, it's been nothing short of a dream of many auditors, not to mention CSs and cramming officers. So yes, this represents nothing less than a whole new plateau in terms of keeping Scientology working. However, there still remains the question as to what you should study. Of course, there's no question that a full chronological study is the route to total understanding. Yet, short of that, what is your route to knowledge? Well, in fact, there are several routes you can take, and for that, I give you the companion to the materials guide chart, Routes to Knowledge. It's precisely what the title implies, distinct individual routes you can take, be it the extension course, Congress lectures, advanced clinical course, chronological study. It begins with the extension course route. This is called the course you're on when you're not on course. The extension course is the sequential study of the basics books. It includes precision lessons to ensure understanding and is conducted by mail. All extension courses are credited toward auditor training check sheets in both the academy and solo auditor courses. You're going to do one or the other, pro or solo auditor training, and if you can't make it to the org, this is the way to speed course time when you finally do enroll. The basics books and lectures. Considering the number of people enrolled on and completing these courses is greater than any other course in history, this one really needs no further explanation. The Congress lectures. Of course, one can study these in any sequence without any prerequisites. However, they are best studied in the sequence they occurred. This is also the alternate chronological route, meaning from basics to the milestone congresses and then backtracking and filling in the ACCs. Then there are the advanced clinical courses. These come after the basics, and obviously, these two are best studied in sequence, although given they represent the wellspring for the bulk of today's auditing processes, they also form an indispensable body of reference material for trained auditors as described a moment ago. And finally, there is the full chronological study beginning with the first book and followed by every book and lecture series in sequence. Of course, this is the most thorough and certain route, for herein is all of the knowledge guaranteeing your future into eternity. So why schedule it all for a future life when the materials are finally available in this one? But either way, those are the distinct routes and your new Routes to Knowledge chart. For all that, however, our new courses, materials, guide chart, routes to knowledge chart, there still remain a few last items on the list if we're going to call this golden age of knowledge a done. So let's now put an exclamation point on everything it comprises, beginning with this. While it is now possible to avail yourself of the full LRH legacy, the accomplishment of that obviously requires considerable study. Until that eventuality, it should yet be possible for a Scientologist to at least gain an in-depth understanding of what the chronological development is. Earlier, I made mention of the fact that I could describe these materials to you all night long and still not cover a fraction of it. I also made mention of a surprise which would provide that information. Well, you can call it the final guarantee that the tech will never be lost again. You can call it your ultimate map and compass, and you can definitely call it our New Year's gift to you. So there you have it, the first ever guidebook to the materials of Dianetics and Scientology. To be sure, it's no less than an encyclopedic reference to the complete range of LRH materials from start to finish. In total, it comprises 478 pages jam-packed with information. In fact, it's so comprehensive it even has its own table of contents as well as an index. As for the contents, it provides a full description of every book, lecture, and film in sequence. The basics, the congresses, the advanced clinical course lectures, LRH on film, classics, the beginning books and audiobooks, and on and on. But even more than that, all books and lectures are described in detail. In other words, take what I described earlier as regards individual ACCs, and now imagine all of that information for every book and lecture series in one compendium, and here it is. Beginning with the synopsis and overview of the lecture series, when and where it was delivered, and the technology it contains. The guidebook further includes a listing of all lecture titles for that series. It additionally includes a listing of all newly developed processes, group processes, etc. It even provides a listing of all written issues within that lecture series. In summary, then, every book and lecture series you find in the materials guide chart is fully explained. Indeed, what you'll find within is the complete golden age of knowledge, even including some new items recovered or produced since launch and never before seen. With the advent of the golden age of knowledge and the recovery of all lectures, the classics would now best be described as the ultimate classics, because as of tonight there are 52 in all, including 15 new ones never before released, and all in 15 languages. So yes, that's the golden age of knowledge, classics, done. Then again, there are the audiobooks. To date, we produced and released all beginning books in audio, but now we have also completed production for all the basics, audiobooks for every one of them, including Science of Survival, Self-Analysis, Advanced Procedure and Axioms, Handbook for Pre-Clears, History of Man, Scientology 880, Scientology 880-08, The Creation of Human Ability, Dianetics 55, and even Introduction to Scientology Ethics. In total, as of tonight, all basics are now in audiobook form and in 15 languages too, and that's Golden Age of Knowledge audiobooks done. Then there are the Congresses, every one of them described in full, including the Western Congress of 1954. It had long been thought lost except for transcripts, but again, since the launch of Golden Age of Knowledge, it's now been discovered, and as of tonight is also available in 15 languages. So once again, that's the Golden Age of Knowledge LRH Congresses done. And finally, there are the public lecture series. Earlier this year, you saw the release of The Golden Dawn. Well, here's its companion series delivered 1 year later in London, England, the Lindsay Lecture Series. Again, these lectures were originally delivered to new public, and virtually every title is a classic in itself, and now they are available as a complete series for the first time and in 15 translated languages. And yes, combine it all with the Complete Materials Guide Chart, the Routes to Knowledge Chart, and the New Materials Guidebook, and that's the materials, your route, and the completion of the Golden Age of Knowledge to ring in this New Year's 2010. All right. For everything you've seen tonight and over the last 5 years in the name of the Golden Age of Knowledge, it's only appropriate you know something else, specifically all it has taken to accomplish this project. You see, while I can tell you about what it took to restore the sound quality of an LRH lecture, or what it took to meticulously verify and or return LRH's written material to pure form, there is yet a final step. Namely, the final step without which none of it would occur. In that regard, it's also the culmination of what LRH long envisioned all the way back to the beginning days of Dianetics and Scientology. As early as 1954, he was attempting to establish dissemination lines so that the materials of Dianetics and Scientology could be accessible to everyone, no matter how remote. But as I said, it was a continuing and ongoing target he always envisioned and hoped one day could be attained. As for what prevented its attainment in earlier years, the extant publishing and audiovisual technology simply had not advanced sufficiently to make it possible. Which is to say, the ability to manufacture and replicate materials at an affordable cost. And I don't only mean cost to the organization, I mean cost to Scientologists wishing to avail themselves of the tech. The numbers say it all. In 1954, the cost of a single ACC lecture on reel-to-reel tape was $15. Of course, that's $1950. Taking inflation into account, $15 in 1954 equals $120 today. As for what the materials cost you today, it's something you'll find out after tonight's event. However, I can tell you this much. Just take the dollar amount per lecture in 1954, don't even bother calculating inflation, and the cost to you today is less than half what you would have paid in 1954. Or to put it another way, were you to calculate inflation, the cost today is equivalent to 95 cents in 1954. So while it could never match the importance of the tech itself, it is nevertheless true that without the organization now in place, the availability and dissemination of the materials you see today would never have been possible. Then again, on the off chance you thought that the books and lectures grew on a book plantation or compact disc forest, the reality is a lot of dedicated staff, not to mention a brilliance of organization made possible by LRH policy. So yes, this is one of those times when a behind-the-scenes look is most appropriate, especially now that it's a fait accompli. Here then is how the Golden Age of Knowledge was brought to you.
Bridge Publications, Los Angeles, California. It stands 276,000 square feet and stretches an entire city block. It's all under one roof: administrative offices, manufacturing, and distribution. Moreover, it's a publishing house unlike any on earth, with state-of-the-art technology pushed to new limits not even thought possible by the manufacturing industry. And of course, it's all about making LRH's materials accessible to everyone. To begin, all raw materials are purchased directly from their source. No middleman, no brokers. And quantities are massive, as in minimum stocks of 20 tons of polycarbonate pellets to manufacture CDs and 3,500 miles of paper. The point? Quantity equals purchasing power, so material costs are absolutely rock bottom. But that's just the first step in lowering prices to you. Next, it's manufacturing. Virtually every 21st century publisher still runs on 20th century technology. Bridge, on the other hand, is 100% digital, the only such facility on Earth. That means every component on the line is computerized. Select the digital file for any book, push a button, and the presses roll. And all without wasting a page. Consequently, it costs exactly the same to print a copy of Dianetics in English as in Bengali, Farsi, Swahili, or Urdu. Hence, dissemination is no longer hindered by the high price of printing smaller quantities for pioneer lands. So, whether it's 100 or 100,000, the cost remains the same. Of course, given these are LRH materials, no detail is spared, right down to covers and labels. It's another digital process with a one-of-a-kind finishing machine built especially for Bridge. And here's something no other publisher does. It's all overlaid with plastic laminate. The point here, your materials are literally waterproof for durability. The bookbinding line is likewise all about quality, to ensure your materials last a lifetime. Here's where the interior pages are glued and bound between covers. This particular machine holds the distinction of having bound every hardback basic that Bridge has produced to date. And given our beginning books are now published in 50 languages and demand is global, this one does paperbacks. It's been tuned the same way for maximum output, binding 6,000 books an hour or just over 1 million a week. Thumb notches are traditionally reserved for encyclopedias or limited editions because they have to be applied by hand. Yet applying tabs to the volume of LRH books produced would have required 100 staff, 12 hours a day. So again, it was the design and manufacture of a one-of-a-kind machine, operated by a complement of 3. Coil binding is another job usually done by hand, and at our quantities would have required still another 100 staff. But yet again, we laid out the specs for a machine that not only automates the entire process, it delivers a finished product 40,000 times a day, or over 250,000 per week, operated by a complement of 2 staff. And if that's transcripts, these are the lectures themselves. The CD line at Bridge begins with hoppers of polycarbonate pellets, which are first melted, and then routed under high pressure into the replication equipment. It times out from raw material to a stamped CD every half a second. Once again, because it's all in-house, cost for 100 lectures in Hebrew are the same as 100,000 in English. While just for the record, from stamping to printing the label on the disc, Bridge rolls out 1 million LRH lectures every week. Typically, any CD you purchase is also packaged by hand. But given the number of titles Bridge carries, it would have taken yet another 100 staff just to keep up. So, it was another custom-built innovation. In the final equation, it's 2 machines plus 4 staff inserting 16,000 CDs per hour. And so it goes across the rest of the manufacturing line. Everything from application of lecture binder labels to shrink wrapping and boxing. But if that's manufacturing, there is still all we have put in place to deliver these materials to you. First, every item in the 2.6 million cubic foot Bridge warehouse is stored sequentially against the materials guide chart. Moreover, it's all tied to a central computer that tracks inventory. As orders are filled, a reprint is automatically triggered, so nothing ever runs out of stock, something no other publishing house in the world can do. And considering that's every title in every language, it's 1.5 million books and another 15 million CDs on hand at all times. The shipping department is likewise automated from start to finish. When an order arrives, it immediately enters the system, subsequently setting off a chain of events, generating a bar-coded packing label, affixing it to the correct size box, and sending it down the conveyor for shipping. The system is even programmed to access the precise weight of every item on the shelf. Boxes are weighed at checkpoints along the line, and if the weight doesn't match what the order should contain, the computer rejects the box and automatically routes it for handling. At the final stage, orders are sealed and scanned. The computer instantly calculates the most economical method of shipping and prints the appropriate label, be it FedEx, UPS, or any other carrier. At which point, it's automatically routed to the correct truck for that shipper. And if all you've just seen is massive in scope and detail, then double it again. Because it's also the same in Copenhagen, Denmark, where New Era Publications manufactures and provides for UK and the totality of our European territories. Combine it all, and without these newly established organizations, dissemination of LRH's fully restored tech would never have occurred. From classics to the basics, congresses to ACCs, from books and audiobooks to beginning books in 50 languages. Then add in extension courses, book courses, and lecture courses for each, not to mention grading manuals as well, all of them translated in multiple foreign tongues, until here they are, the more than 10,000 individual items that comprise the golden age of knowledge. And with what now stands at our publication organizations, it's now all on demand to meet any demand. So yes, that's the definition of going global. For today, we not only have the full LRH legacy, we also have the means to bring substance to those words, planetary dissemination, now and for eternity. And that's our new golden age of 2010.
So, in light of all that, here's my farewell message for this evening. What ultimately powers Scientology is precisely what's awaiting you in the adjoining hall: the factors, the axioms, communication, exteriorization, whole track perception, granting of beingness, goals, and world clearing. These are things of ceaseless wonder. These are things to experience and know, after which nothing is ever the same again. Because having come to realize these things are real and that this technology actually works, you actually come to realize there's no turning back, not ever. At which point, your destiny is written in stone, because whether you make your mark in a field group or a mission, whether your name is woven through a drug salvage rollout or a literacy drive, whether you leave your indelible stamp on countless copies of The Way to Happiness or any division of a new ideal org, so long as your eye never strays from that mountaintop, when all is said and done, your legacy for tomorrow is your inheritance the day after, and all, as LRH tells us here.
Hello. The sun is in the sky. The stars are in the heavens. Life lives. And I am here to wish you a happy holiday season. What will it bring? For some, I trust, a revitalized purpose and shining life. For others, not so fortunate, another step deeper into the black pit of oblivion. Some conceive they are in the toils of fate, but others, having achieved insight, know that is not so. It is you who will determine whether you will go upward or down, whether your life will be happier or worse. I could tell you many airy things of no consequence, but out of friendship for you and all men, I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that you are the one who determines your own destiny. It is you who choose your future. It is you who holds firmly to your goals or lets them slip. It is you who insist upon receiving standard tech or tolerates shoddy substitutes. When all is said, it is you who will be with yourself at the end. And it is you who will ask yourself, did I do right or did I do wrong? And the state you find yourself in will be the answer. Will you become a brighter person or a cinder? I cannot tell you to arrive at some high state. I cannot order you to be well or happy or affluent. I can only point out to you the route to what your innermost self desires. I have, through half a century of work, found the road out. I've done all I could to point the way. It is you who choose or not to achieve a higher state. Standard ethics will keep you and your friends on the straight road. Standard policy will give you a powerful organization expanding and prosperous. Standard tech will take you into states of beingness where nothing can strike you down. In this minute particle of time, we have the opportunity to reverse the downward spiral of life. It is you who will avail yourself of it or not. There is no longer any question if it is the right road. Countless people now have followed it with success. It is no longer a question whether standard ethics and policy work. It is only a question of whether or not you apply them. Will you take advantage of the carefully marked trail upward? I hope you do, my friends, for if you don't, it will be very lonely in the sky.